few record covers and a few things here and there. So we knew that some of them had been done. Most of the microfilm was in pretty poor shape, and so the ads weren't very clear, they weren't crisp, they weren't sharp, they were kind of blurry, and they didn't look that great, but you could tell they were interesting. Well, in 2002, I just happened to hear that somebody had put for sale up on the internet an original piece of artwork that had come from the Paramount record company, and it was for sale, and it was for a Blind Lemon Jefferson song. By the time I heard about this thing being for sale, it had already sold. The auction was over. But I wrote to the seller, and I just said, hey, you don't happen to have any more of these, do you? Because I missed this one. Sorry I missed this one, but do you have any more? And the seller responded very kind of offhandedly, well, yeah, how many do you want? And, of course, I responded back, how many do you have? And the answer came back, a whole lot. How many do you want? And so the obvious answer for me was, I want all of them, because these are beautiful looking, and they're crisp, they're sharp, they're clear, and who knows what you have, but yeah, I'd like to buy them all. What can we do about that? And so there was some back and forth negotiations, a little bit of a tense moment when I found out that there was a second person that had even more of it, and it may have been destroyed, but then it turned out that they weren't, and all those were available. Bottom line of it was, I flew back to Wisconsin, where these people were. Both of them arrived with these boxes of original advertising material that had come out of a building in Port Washington, Wisconsin. It had come out of a building of a newspaper that had been long abandoned. They used to print the local Port Washington, Wisconsin newspaper, and they also printed all the advertising material for Paramount Records. And when the newspaper shut down, they left all this stuff in filing cabinets in the building, and there it sat for years and years and years afterwards. And it was these two people that had come into the building after the new owners had purchased the building. They were supposed to clear out all the stuff that was still piled in the building, throw it out, and make way for the new business that was going in there. So these people looked in these file cabinets and saw all this original art and photographs and whatever, and thought it was pretty cool, and didn't want to just throw it in the garbage can, so they divided it up and took it home. And that's how one piece of it wound up on the internet, and then I wound up tracing all the rest of it, putting the two collections back together. There were a few pieces that got away because they had given away a few here and there over the years, and that's fine, whatever, but I got the majority of it. And then I put out the word that I wanted more of that kind of stuff, and I did a whole advertising campaign in the Port Washington, Grafton area, attempting to find more advertising material and more records, and I did. I found some Paramount records, some very rare ones, along with some more advertising material. Once we printed the first calendar, and people could see, this was 2004, people could see how crisp and clear and sharp the images were and how great they were. The other thing that they noticed right away was that I had images in there that had never appeared in the Chicago Defender. And what came about is I figured out really quickly that, as far as I can tell, an advertisement was created for each and every one of those records. However, they weren't all sent to the Chicago Defender to advertise there. A lot of them were simply sent out to record stores when the records were sent out.
Right. Now, the style of art might suggest that there might have been, maybe one artist who created most of these images. Have you been able to determine who the artist is?
All right, that's an interesting question. No, I don't know who the artists were. The legendary cartoon artist Robert Crumb is a huge fan of these type of images. In fact, he's made his entire career out of drawing kind of like these, because he saw the original ones that started getting published in the 60s and loved them so much that he had kind of adapted his style to this same style. And when I first made this big discovery of all these that had come out of that building in Wisconsin, he heard about it, and he flew from France, where he lives, into Oregon, came to my house and spent an afternoon just studying them and staring at them and looking through all these several thousand images and absorbing them. And it was him who told me that he can tell, as an artist, he can tell that there were 3 different people that worked on these. So there are 3 different artists that worked on these. We don't know who they are. I did spend some time and some money advertising all over the area in which these things were first created, asking anybody who had any connection to the original artist to come forward and tell me. So 1, I could pay them royalties, and 2, I could see if they had any others that that we didn't have. And I got absolutely 0 response to that. So I don't know. I know that there were 3 different artists, but I don't know who they were, and unless somebody comes forward and says, my grandfather did these, we'll never know.
Now let's see. When I flip open the calendar, January features not an illustration, but a rare photo of Kansas Joe McCoy and Lizzie Douglas, better known as Memphis Minnie. That's really cool. I don't know if I've ever seen this photo before.
Oh, yeah. In addition to looking for the original artwork drawings, which I'm always on the lookout for those, and we've mentioned those, I'm also always on the lookout for photographs of blues singers from the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. The stuff out of the 50s occasionally will turn up. The stuff out of the 40s is a little bit harder to find. When you get to the 20s and 30s, photographs of blues singers are near impossible to find. There were some that were used within this advertising material, and that image that you're speaking of is an example of it. That is exactly the way the original advertisement for the record store was. You will not find that in the Chicago Defender ads or any of those places, but the ad that was created for the record stores at the time has the titles of that Memphis Minnie and Kansas Joe record exactly as you see it there, with the picture of them around it. And I'm always looking for those photographs because they're really hard to find.
Well, John, we are out of time, but I can't let you leave without asking a generic question that I pose to every guest, and that is, what is your definition of the blues?
I might define it differently than most people. To me, it's an expression of the way times were when those records were recorded. And you're dealing with a situation where the African-American person of the late 20s and early 30s was considered a second-class citizen. That was a nice way they were referred to. And they were treated very poorly in a whole lot of ways. And they sang about things that were related to how they were treated and were related to how they felt as a human being persecuted like that. And that came out as what we now call the blues. And as Sunhouse said, that the blues was what goes on between a man and a woman when things don't go right. And he's right. That's a correct way of defining it. But also, the blues to me is more like what the African American experience was like at that time and how they chose to deal with it in making music and writing songs, and that's my definition of the blues.
All right, perfect. Well, John, thanks so much for taking the time to be on the show today.
All right, thanks so much, and we'll do it again whenever you want to.
Thank you. And for the listeners, the Way, Way Back Blues with the Mississippi Moaner is coming up next.
Blues America is endorsed by the Phoenix Blues Society. Learn how to become a member at phoenixblues.org.
I'm John Primer.
And I'm Bob Cortor.
You listen to Blues America.
What we're going to do right here is go back. Way back. Back into time.
It's time to go back, baby. Way, way back. This is the Way, Way Back Blues.
So cold and Johnny, like a hard to sing. So cold and Johnny, like a hard to sing. And it make me mad 'cause you broke my diamond ring. Ah, mama, won't be bad no more. Take me, mama, won't be bad no more. You can get my love and let that old black snake go. Black snake crawling, crawling in my room. Black snake crawling, crawling in my room. Somehow brown woman better come and get your black snake food. Hey, mama, what have I said and done? Hey, mama, what have I said and done? Some joke young lovers and the show gonna be my wrong. Hey, cries my own power, say to love, to love you. Cry, your daddy do love you. You're the high stepping mom and I don't care what you do. I was a little boy on my way to school. Was I little boy on my way to school? And I hopped on a woman and she broke my mammy's groove. Mama said reckless, daddy said I'm young and wise. Mama said reckless, daddy said I'm young and wise. He's so restless, he's my baby child.
That's the Way Back Blues with Isaiah Nettles, better known and more recognized under the stage name, the Mississippi Moaner. Now, of course, that's probably a name given to him by record producer Uncle Art Satherley. But here's Nettles singing It's Cold in China Blues. That could be found on the free CD in the 2018 Classic Blues Artwork Calendar by today's special guest, John Tefteller. That's the one we've been talking about. Now, despite being a fine singer and guitarist in the style of Blind Lemon Jefferson, Nettles was only known to cut two sides for Vocalion Records, and in the book, Chasing the Devil's Music, it suggested that Nettles was active around the Rockport, Mississippi train station area. His music is recommended for any serious blues fans. Well, this were the Blues Talks, a little program recorded weekly at the Chico Chisholm Memorial Studio in Phoenix. I've been your host, Drew Verbus. I'd like to thank my wonderful guest, John Tefteller. And as always, links to today's special guest is posted at our website, bluesamerica.com. Well, thank you to all the fine community radio stations for supporting the blues. And all of you who are listening, be a patriot and support Blues America. Bye.
We'll travel. More Blues America next week.
Blues America.